So before I get into the horrific economic news out of Russia today, and when I say horrific, I mean horrific, which includes the fifth largest company in Russia coming out with earnings. Last night down, net earnings year over year down 96% from 62 billion rubles to 2.7 billion rubles for the first half of 2025, year over year comparison. Down 96%. This is the fifth largest company in Russia. They own 78 companies in pretty much every segment of the Russian economy. This is, it's a bellwether of things to come for sure. Before I talk about this and this bond apocalypse that's unfolding, as well as almost half of Russian banks are now experiencing net deposit outflows, I wanted to get into Russia's massive missile and drone attack on Kyiv last night. They sent missiles and drones onto the city for about 6 hours, targeting mainly residential buildings, residential neighborhoods with ballistic missiles and Shahed drones. We've got 9 dead, including a 6-year-old child. We've got 83 wounded, injured, with people still being pulled from rubble now at 1 p.m. These attacks ran from about midnight until about almost 6 a.m. And like I said, this targeted purely the civilian population. You know, Russia is a terrorist state. There's no other way to cut it on this. They are just committing mass murder. And with every deadline out of the US, you know, whether it was 2 weeks or 10 days or 50 days. At this point, Putin is humiliating Trump. I don't know how you can look at it any other way. All the tough talk is just followed up by mass murder. Yeah, well, it's not just last night. This is happening in several cities. I mean, last night it was Kyiv, and you know, tonight, who knows? It'll be Odessa or Dnipro or Kharkiv's almost every day now. You know, sometimes it's even Lviv, you know, over by Poland. So, yep, anyway, I had to say that. So back to the horrific economic data. The fifth largest company in Russia that I'm referring to, the one that posted 96% down in earnings for the first half of 2025, is Russian Railways. Russian Railways, it's not just railways. They have 78 companies. It's a state company. They own everything from construction firms to infrastructure, real estate, finance, insurance, telecom, healthcare, security, paramilitary, funeral industries. I mean, they own everything from birth to death and all the war in between and all the Russian things, you know, all the barbarity. They own all that stuff. It's a massive company. It's the fifth largest company in Russia. They went from 62 billion in the first half of 2024 to the first half of 2025 being 2.7 billion, a loss of 96%. Right? I mean, these are massive numbers. This is on the heels of last week's drop of 89% for the third largest steel producer in Russia, MMK. In the same week, a drop of 55% for the largest steel producer in Russia, Severstal, down 55% for the first half. Yeah, so things are only getting worse and worse on the corporate front. Now let's skip over to something that I find, this is the most interesting thing that I probably talked about on this channel. And if you can get your head around this is sort of where it's all at for me. There's a headline today, Russians began to withdraw money from large banks after lowered rates and rumors of freezing deposits. So some Russians are figuring out that something is going on, right? Maybe we don't want to have our money in banks. I mean, what are the banks normally doing? The banks are normally issuing mortgages, issuing to the corporate sector, issuing to small and medium businesses. They then hold that debt. They collect interest, and it keeps the economy going. But what's been happening lately is, so yesterday the Russian government issued another 216 billion in Russian sovereign bonds. Next question will be, who the heck is buying Russian sovereign bonds. The Russian government has a budget deficit that's up 600% year over year for the month of June, right? The core of the Russian economy, oil and gas revenue, is down 34%. The tax revenue from the oil and gas sector of the economy is down 34% year over year. This is all Russian central bank data. You can go to the Russian central bank, take screenshots of one of the tables, upload it to ChatGPT. You no longer need a room full of accountants to do this stuff. Government expenses are up 18% officially, okay? And that's, I mean, all the black book war stuff is purely not in this. The amount of Russian bonds that has been issued this year is up 366% year over year, up until yesterday, from January 1st. So the Russian government has issued 366% more Russian government bonds than it did for the same period last year. So who is buying these bonds? Well, I'll tell you who's buying these bonds. It's not companies. It's not foreign banks. It's not foreign companies. It's not hedge funds. Who's buying these banks? Who's buying these bonds? It's Russian banks being forced at the point of the government gun to buy Russian bonds. The government then takes that money. They build an occasional road to keep the pitchforks out of the hands of the population and to do all their nefarious Russian things in which they're, building North Korean weapons factories and all the things that they're doing. So next would be, how are the banks buying this? Well, see, the banks aren't lending money into the economy anymore. They're buying Russian bonds. So the balance sheets are filling with these bonds, right? What is the Russian government doing with all this money that they're borrowing from these banks by means of bonds, right? It's capital destruction. They build a missile, send it into an apartment building in Kyiv, $8 million Iskander missile, for example. Missile factories are in overtime right now. They're building more. North Korean weapons factories. I mean, they're keeping that regime. They're ramping North Korea into a massive, it's going to be a big problem one day for Asia and probably for the rest of the world. This is what's happening. So these bonds that these banks are accumulating now, these aren't mortgages that will be paid back. It's not lending to some company that's going to pay you back. You've got lending to the corporate sector, according to the Russian Central Bank, is down 89% year over year. 81.9%, 81.9%, 82%. That's to the corporate sector. That's large businesses, right? Lending to the small and medium business sector of the economy is down 53%. They're not issuing loans anymore. They're buying bonds. And so what's happening is banks' balance sheets are now filling with what will one day be worthless government bonds. And so now Russians are starting to figure it out. We've got almost half of Russian banks now. News a couple hours ago. Russians began to withdraw money from large banks after lowered rates and rumors of freezing deposits. So Russians are now, the smart ones, are starting to figure out what's going on. Banks are going to be left with worthless assets. And what happens to the deposits? Consumer level deposits. Yeah, there's pitchforks. It's going to be pitchforks. So if you can wrap your head around that, that is really the whole ball game. Yeah, well, that's the Russian economy. That's what we're looking at. And not to mention June car sales down 31%. Avtovaz, the number one car producer in Russia, yesterday came out and said that not only are they moving down to a 4-day work week, as are all Russian car companies announced that after Avtovaz did last week, they are cutting the salary of the workers 20%. They're cutting all overtime. So these are all to manage the population. They can't just, they can't just fire everybody. The government is not allowing that. So they're just boiling this frog. It's all about managing the pitchforks right now, and it's getting more and more interesting every day. Well, that's the wrap up. I've got some even crazier data for you tomorrow, but I didn't have a chance to put it together yet today. More insane earnings reports and Russian central bank data. All right, have a good day.